Namo Buddhaya, Namo Amitabha. Hello everyone. So someone asked, what is enlightenment and why is it desirable? So today let's talk about enlightenment. So enlightenment is a state where one is free from all sufferings in life. And there are different levels of enlightenment. In Theravada Buddhism, there is a total of 4 levels of enlightenment, whereas in Mahayana Buddhism, there is a total of 52 stages of enlightenment. So at the level of the Buddha, which is perfect enlightenment, one is completely free from all sufferings in life, and one has completely awakened to the truth of life and the universe. And why is it desirable? So it goes without saying, right? Who doesn't want to be liberated from all sufferings in life? Right? Who doesn't want to be completely awakened to the truth of life and the universe, right? To the truth of who we truly are. So today let's look at the 4 levels of enlightenment in Theravada Buddhism, which equivalents to a basic level of enlightenment in Mahayana Buddhism, and we'll discuss the 52 stages of enlightenment in the next video. So because I'm a Mahayana Buddhist, so I talk more from the Mahayana perspective, which offers a more complete picture in the Buddha's teachings. So the 4 levels of enlightenment in Theravada Buddhism are: first, Sotapanna, string enterer; second, Sakadagami, once returner; third, Anagami, non-returner; fourth, Arahant. So Arahant is the highest degree of enlightenment in Theravada Buddhism, and for an Arahant, one has completely got rid of the 10 fundamental afflictions, which include greed, anger, ignorance, pride, and doubt, attachment to the self and anything pertaining to a self, attachment to the extremes, attachment to rites and rituals, attachment to wrong subjective views, and all the other false views. And because of that, they have completely transcended the cycle of reincarnation, samsara. And these 10 fundamental afflictions can be even further classified into 88 types of wrong views and 81 types of wrong perceptions, wrong thinking. So we'll talk about each level of the enlightenment separately. First is Sotapanna. So Sotapanna means string enterer. One has entered into the stream of the sages. One has joined the sagehood and is no longer an ordinary being. One will no longer be reborn in the 3 lower realms. Instead, one will have 7 more rebirths in the heaven and the human realm, back and forth for 7 times, and they will realize Arahant and exit the cycle of reincarnation. So for Sotapanna, he has completely cut off the 88 types of wrong views, delusional views. Why so many? Because the 6 realms of reincarnation can also be divided into the 3 realms, the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm, depending on the characteristics of the beings there. And for all these realms, because they do not correctly understand the 4 noble truths, the 4 noble truths are: there is sufferings in life, there is the cause of suffering, and the cessation of suffering, and the path that leads to the end of suffering. So because not having correctly understood the 4 noble truths, so it gives rise to all the wrong views, delusional views in each of these realms. And adding up together is a total of 88 delusional views. And for Sotapanna, they have completely severed these 88 delusional views. And the 88 delusional views can also be summarized into the 5 types of delusional views, such as attachment to the self and anything that pertaining to the self. Ordinary beings are attached to the body, the form. We talk about the 5 skandhas are empty of inherent existence. The 5 skandhas are the form, which is this physical body, and our feelings, our thoughts, our mental activities, and consciousness. The consciousness is the 6th consciousness, the ability to separate, the ability to discern. And this is also dependent on the external objects and internal thoughts. Whatever that is dependent on something, this is always changing. All these 5 skandhas are always constantly changing. So it is what we call in Buddhism an illusion that we should not be attached. It's empty of inherent existence. So there is no permanent fixed self-nature that attached to it. And this body is also temporary, constantly changing. It is ours to keep just temporarily, like a piece of cloth. It has a lifespan. When it's over, then we discard it. So that's why all the 5 skandhas are empty of inherent existence, including the 6th consciousness, which is the delusional mind that we talked about before. So we should not be attached. But this is difficult, extremely difficult for ordinary beings, because they are attached to the 5 skandhas. They are attached to the self, and anything that pertaining to the self, to this illusional self. And that's why we suffer. So sometimes in Mahayana sutras, if you see a Buddha talk about the self-nature, this is not the egoistic individual self, but rather it means the Buddha nature. So that is different. Do not get confused. So there is no individual self in anything that pertaining to a self. And second is the attachment to the extremes. It's sort of like the one-sided views. For instance, a lot of people think when one dies, then there is nothing left, which is not true. Our mind still exists. Our consciousness still exists. Some people think when a human dies, then one will be reborn again as a human. Or when a dog dies, one will be reborn again as a dog. This may not necessarily be the case. It depends on our karma. So depending on our karma, and we'll be dragged by our karmic force and reincarnated into one of the 6 realms of reincarnation. Unless if you Nianfo, recite the name of Amitabha Buddha and vow to attain rebirth in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. In that way, you can transcend the cycle of reincarnation easily. And also, attachment to wrong subjective views. For instance, a lot of people, they are very stubborn on holding their views to be true, such as we just talked about the wrong views like attachment to the body, or there is no reincarnation, all these kind of views. They maybe hold the wrong views and think that it is true. This is also attachment to wrong subjective views. And attachment to rites and rituals and aesthetic practices. For instance, a lot of people, particularly in India, lots of different spiritual practices that they try to torture their body. Maybe they hang their body somewhere for a very, very long time, or even burn some parts of their body, or raise one hand really high for the rest of their life, etc. So all this kind of extreme aesthetic practices that they think it will lead them into enlightenment, into nirvana. These are what the Buddha called the wrong practices. Or some people think they offer to the fire and it can bless them to ascend to the heaven. All these are the wrong way of practices. So one should not be attached. The Buddha talked about the middle path. To be enlightened is not about torturing the body, and also not about indulging in desire. One remain in the middle. I do not need to torture this body, but also do not indulge in desire. And also attachment to all the other wrong views. So the wrong views that we just talked about and all the other wrong views, one should not be attached. So for a Sotapanna, they have completely gotten rid of all these 5 types of wrong views. And because they have understood the 4 Noble Truths correctly, they also do not have the wrong views of greed, anger, ignorance, pride, and doubt. They do not have any doubt about the Buddha's teachings. And also they know that they should not give rise to greed, anger, ignorance, pride. But they have not completely gotten rid of the wrong thoughts, wrong thinking. They can sort of manage their greed, anger, and ignorance and pride, but they have not completely severed them. if that makes sense. It's one thing to understand something correctly in theory, to establish the right views. Another thing to actually embody it in every moment of our life. Like we know we should not have greed, but we sometimes cannot help ourselves. The mind will just give rise to thoughts of greed, thoughts of anger, thoughts of ignorance, thoughts of pride, etc. So for Sotapanna, they have completely established the right view. They do not have any of the wrong views, but they have not completely severed the greed, anger, ignorance, and pride. But they can manage it, and it's of course to a much lesser extent than what we ordinary beings have. And for Sotapanna, because they have severed all the wrong views, they will naturally obtain the supernormal power, such as clairvoyance, divine eye. They can see things far away without obstacles, and clairaudience. They can hear the sound far away without obstacles. So these so-called supernormal abilities are naturally activated, not because they have to cultivate it, because they sever their wrong views, they sever a lot of the afflictions. So all these innate abilities are activated. The Buddha told us all these so-called supernormal powers or abilities are actually all within us. These are also not to be attached, but these are sort of the byproduct of enlightenment. One do not have to pursue them, but through severing the afflictions, this will be naturally activated. And for Sotapanna, when they walk, their feet will not touch the ground, but other people they cannot see. Their shoes will not really get dirty. And whatever they do, they will not harm any sentient beings. So these are the kind of abilities that the Sotapanna has. And the next is Sakadagami, one's returner. So Sakadagami is higher than Sotapanna in that they got rid of more of the wrong thinkings, their greed, anger, ignorance, to a much lesser extent than the Sotapanna string enterer. And that's why they will only have one more rebirth in the desire realm, in the heaven or the human realm. And then after that, they will realize Arahant, and they will be able to exit the cycle of reincarnation. And for a Sakadagami, they will naturally activate it, telepathy. They can read other people's mind. They understand. They know what other people are thinking. And also they are capable of knowing their past lives. If it is not too far back, there is a limit of the extent of how much they know. If it is not too far back, then they will be able to know their past lives. So these two so-called supernormal abilities, they will also be activated without them needing to practice or seek, just by severing their afflictions. Again, the innate abilities will be activated. And the third is Anagami. Anagami means non-returner, which means that one will no longer be returned to the desire realm. One will not be reborn in the desire realm. Instead, for the Anagamis, they will be reborn in the highest levels of the form realms, also known as the 5 pure abodes. And in there, they will be able to realize Arahant and exit the cycle of reincarnation. So why they will not be reborn in the desire realm? Because they have completely severed lust. They have completely severed greed, and also no more anger, no more greed. So lust, greed, this has to do with the desire realm. Because they have completely severed that, so they are being born in the highest level of the form realm. In the form realm, there is no lust, no desire that we sentient beings in the desire realm have. This is the most difficult to get rid of. Like the Buddha said, if there is another thing that's as difficult as lust, to get rid of lust, then no other beings can exit the cycle of reincarnation. So for one to have the slightest attachment to lust, and also slightest attachment to the self, anything pertaining to self. If one has the slightest attachment to anything in the 3 realms or the 6 realms, then one cannot exit the cycle of reincarnation. So it is really the most difficult thing, like extremely difficult for one to rely on one's self-effort to realize enlightenment to the stage of Arahant and to exit the cycle of reincarnation. That's why in the Dharma ending age, the Buddha told us to Nianfo, to recite the name of Amitabha Buddha and to attain rebirth in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. This is the easiest path for all the sentient beings to exit the cycle of reincarnation without having the need to first realize enlightenment through one's self-effort. So if there is lust, there is samsara. No lust, nirvana. So if any sort of spiritual teacher that advocate lust, I tell you to indulge in desire so you can exit the cycle of reincarnation, you can obtain enlightenment, I do not believe them. As we can see, if one has the slightest attachment to lust, one cannot realize enlightenment. I'm talking about a self-effort path. So if there is lust, there is samsara. Lust, a craving to lust, particularly to lust, is the very fundamental reason why we are being born in the desire realm, why we are still in the cycle of reincarnation. So the Buddha talked about this clearly in the Suragama Sutra. And for the Anagamis, the type of supernatural power that they will activate, including that they can fly, they can be anywhere at will, and they can fly, they can teleport, they can transform things to make things big to small, small to big. They can make oneself invisible, they can duplicate oneself. So this sounds like really fancy to us ordinary beings, but that is the type of supernormal abilities that an Anagami can activate. And again, the Buddha said all these are actually within us, but it's just that we are being buried by our afflictions, our attachment. So these so-called supernormal powers are being hidden and we cannot really activate them. And next is Arahant. Arahant is the highest level of enlightenment for the Shravakas in Theravada Buddhism. So Shravakas are the beings who listen to the Buddha expounding the teachings such as the Four Noble Truths and practice the Noble Eightfold Path. And their goal is to attain Arahant so they can exit the cycle of reincarnation. So Arahant has completely gotten rid of all the wrong views. Not only they have gotten rid of the wrong views that we talk about, they have also gotten rid of the 81 types of wrong thoughts, wrong perceptions, wrong thinkings. So why so many types? Again, because we have the desire and the form realm and the formless realm, and all this adding up to be 81 types. But these 81 types are basically greed, anger, ignorance, and pride. So there's no doubt, because for the Sotapanna, at the first level, they have already gotten rid of the doubt in the Buddha's teachings. So for the Arahant, they completely sever all the delusional views and perceptions and delusional thinkings, and hence they transcended the cycle of reincarnation. And for the Arahant, the kind of supernormal power that they will activate, including those 5 types that we just talked about, and also they have the extinction of all defiled mental states. So this is the type of supernormal power the Buddha said this is the most worth having. The previous 5s are just like sort of magic tricks, whereas to be freed from all defiled mental states, this is the best. This is what all beings should aim for. And that's why Arahant is also called the worthy one. So the word Arhat also means worthy of offering, the worthy ones, the ones who is worthy to receive offerings from the humans and the heavenly beings. So sometimes when we read the Buddha Sutras, we also see that the name of the Buddha that also follows by a series of titles such as Tathagata, Arhat, Sanya Sambuddha, etc. So the Arhat here means worthy of offering. So the word Arahant means worthy of offering. It doesn't mean that the Buddha is only an Arahant. For the Theravada Buddhists, they think that Arahants are equals to the Buddha. The level of enlightenment is the same. But whereas for Mahayana Buddhists, we say, actually not really the truth. If you read the Mahayana Sutras, you will know that the path of the Shravakas is only a skillful means for the Buddha to let them to rest, to recuperate, like we see in the Lotus Sutras. In fact, the Buddha wants all of us to be the Buddha, to be perfectly enlightened. So there is the path of Shravaka, Pachaka Buddha. Pachaka Buddhas are those who realize enlightenment by their own, without the need of the Buddha. And also Bodhisattvas and Buddha. So the Buddha's level of enlightenment is much, much, much higher than an Arahant. So in Mahayana Buddhism, we talk about the 52 stages of enlightenment, with the level of enlightenment of an Arahant only equivalent to a very basic level of enlightenment in Mahayana Buddhism, which we'll discuss in the next video. So as we can see, it is extremely difficult to realize enlightenment through self-effort. If you have the slightest attachment to the self and anything pertaining to the self, if you have the slightest attachment to lust, if you have the slightest attachment to anything in the 6 realms of reincarnation, you cannot exit the cycle of reincarnation. So I would say almost, just to be conservative, almost nobody can rely on their self-effort to realize enlightenment, particularly in this Dharma ending age, the period that we are in now, which is exactly what the Buddha predicted, where the world will be filled with so much desire and all that, and enlightenment. It's almost impossible. No one actually attains enlightenment through their own self-effort. So what is the best path for all the beings in the Dharma ending age? It's the Pure Land path. Really, to recite the name of Amitabha Buddha, to rely on Amitabha Buddha's great powers and vows to receive us to his Pure Land, and there we will attain enlightenment. This is the easiest path for all in the Dharma ending age to realize enlightenment. Without Amitabha Buddha's help, without Amitabha Buddha's power and vow, it's almost impossible for anyone here in the world to realize enlightenment. So this is indeed true, not false. So in the next video, we'll discuss the 52 stages of enlightenment in Mahayana Buddhism. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Amitabhaya.